They set fire to everything I had built with my own two hands. Years of dedication, sweat, and dreams, gone, reduced to nothing but ash in a single ruthless act. My farm, my legacy, my future, wiped out as if it had never existed. But what those power-hungry HOA members didn't realize was that their worst mistake wasn't burning my land to ground. It was leaving behind a single critical document, a legal loophole that would become the weapon of their own destruction. They thought they had won. They had no idea what kind of storm they were about to face. Would they be able to withstand the consequences of what they had done? The battle had only just begun. But before I tell you how I turned the tables on them, let me take you back to where it all started. Comment below where you're watching from. It all began with a letter. The first notice from the HOA arrived on a crisp autumn morning, wedged inside my mailbox like an omen of doom. That was the day my world started to crumble. I remember it vividly. The warmth of the sun on my back as I gathered fresh eggs from my hens, their gentle clucking always bringing a smile to my face. These weren't just animals. They were my family, my life. For 5 years, I had nurtured my little 6-acre farm just outside the Pine Creek city limits, turning it into my own slice of paradise. I grew the juiciest tomatoes, the kind that burst with flavor at first bite. My 15 happy chickens provided fresh eggs daily, and my 2 goats kept the grass trimmed in their mischievous way. My grandfather had left me this land, and I had turned it into something magical, a place where fireflies dance in the evening air, with a scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers filled my lungs. I was here first. That was the crucial detail. My farm had existed long before the polished, pristine houses of Oak Ridge Estates started cropping up 3 years ago. At first, the new development didn't bother me. Sure, their cookie-cutter mansions with perfectly manicured lawns didn't exactly fit with my weathered barn and vegetable patches, but we coexisted just fine until Karen Whitfield moved in. Is that your rooster making that awful noise at 5 in the morning? Those were the first words Karen ever spoke to me. No introduction, no friendly wave, just complaints. She stood at the edge of our property line, her crisp white blouse and expensive slacks looking out of place against the backdrop of my rustic farm. Her perfectly manicured nails gripped her phone like it was a lifeline. "That's Harold," I said with a smile, trying to be neighborly. "He's just doing his job. Farm animals make noise sometimes. That's part country living." Her lips thinned, her expression sour. "This isn't the country anymore. This is Oak Ridge Estates, and we have standards." I wiped my hands on my jeans, suppressing an annoyed sigh. "Actually, my land isn't part of Oak Ridge Estates. I was here before your development even broke ground. Different zoning laws apply to my property." Karen's sharp eyes scanned my land, lingering on my chicken coop, my vegetable garden, and a small compost pile near the fence. A slow, calculating smirk crossed her face. "We'll see about that," she said. "I'm on the HOA board now, and we don't allow unsightly farm activities to bring down our property values." I should have taken her more seriously. I really should have. After that, the letters started arriving like clockwork. Every week, an official-looking notice with the Oak Ridge Estates logo at the top. Too many chickens, improper fencing, unsightly equipment, violations of HOA policies that had nothing to do with me, since I wasn't even a member of their precious association. I ignored them. Legally, they had no right to enforce anything. But something told me to keep the letters, just in case. Then came the complaints. The compost pile smelled. The chickens were too loud. My goats were roaming too close to the fence. Karen even called city officials, claiming my farm was a public nuisance. She took photos from the road, pointing out every feather that dared to float over property line. And just like that, my other neighbors began to change. People who used to wave now turned their heads when they saw me. Mrs. Gonzalez, who used to buy eggs from me every week, suddenly stopped coming by. Only Lisa Martinez still greeted me when she walked her dog in the evenings. "Don't take it personally," Lisa told me one day, leaning against my fence. "Karen's been showing photos of your farm at HOA meetings, calling it a health hazard." Some people believe her. Others just don't want to get involved. Can she really do anything? I asked, My land isn't even part of Oak Ridge. Lisa hesitated. Be careful. Her husband is friends with someone on the county zoning board. She's been talking about getting the boundaries redrawn. That night, I barely slept. A gnawing feeling of unease settled in my gut. But the worst part? I couldn't afford to stick around and fight just yet. My mother's health had been declining for months, and she needed me. Every year, I spent 2 weeks caring for her after her treatments. This was one trip I couldn't cancel. The day before I left, I saw Karen walking along my property line with 3 men in suits, clipboards in hand, pointing at different parts of my farm. When she noticed me watching, she smiled. Not a friendly smile, a victorious one, the kind that made my stomach twist in knots. That night, as I packed my bags, I took precautions. I asked my friend Miguel to check on my animals daily. I installed 2 security cameras facing the property line. I even called the sheriff's office, voicing my concerns. Don't worry so much, Miguel reassured me. What's the worst that could happen in 2 weeks? If only he knew. As I drove away the next morning, I caught sight of Karen standing at the edge of her driveway, phone in hand, watching me leave. In her garage, I noticed something odd. Several large red containers lined up neatly against the wall. If only I had turned around. If only I had stayed. But my mother needed me. 2 weeks later, I returned home to a nightmare. The second I turned onto my road, I knew something was wrong. The sky had a dirty, smudged look, like a giant hand had wiped charcoal across it. And the smell, thick, acrid, suffocating. The stench of a massive fire. Panic surged through me as I pressed down on the gas pedal, my old truck roaring forward. No, no, no. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the wheel. When my farm finally came into view, my heart stopped. Everything was gone.